Hey guys, this is Matt from RC Depot. Today we're going to show you how to install the Phantom 3 RCD retract kit. I'm going to go ahead and start by removing the top of the Phantom shell. I've already removed the screws previous to the video in order to shorten the time, but what you're going to do is remove these 3 screws here. And these are going to be a T8 Torx tool, and then the small screw at the end, which is going to be a T6 Torx tool, and repeat the same step for all 4 arms. Once all the screws are out, remove the shell. Do pay attention to the clips. Phantom 3 is not like the Phantom 2 in the sense that it has clips holding the shell on. These can be a little tricky. You're going to want to kind of pinch the bottom side of the shell in order to unclip this, so be mindful of that. We're going to start by replacing the wiring harness with the included wiring harness in the Phantom 3 retract kit. I'm going to go ahead and start by unplugging this top plier here from the main board. It's going to be the black 10-pin connector. I'm going to go ahead and unclip that. Make sure to pay attention to this. It does have a clip, so you do need to kind of push the clip back in order to unplug it from the board. Once you get that unplugged, we're going to go ahead and flip over the Phantom. We're going to pay attention to this vision sensor. We're going to have to undo the 4 screws here in order to remove the bottom half of this cable harness. So go ahead and grab your 1.5, and again we're just going to remove the 4 screws holding the vision positioning sensor in. Go ahead and take those out. Once you remove the 4 screws, you want to carefully lift up the vision positioning sensor. Be mindful that there is a cable attached to the top. This is the next cable that we're going to remove. Again, this does have a clip, so make sure you push down on the clip and disconnect it. Go ahead and set the vision positioning sensor to the side. Next, we're going to remove the 4 screws that hold this silver bracket on. We're going to do this to allow us to get to the connector underneath of it. You can see it's going to be this little white Molex connector underneath. So go ahead and loosen the 4 Phillips screws, and we can go get that connector taken care of. Once the 4 screws have been removed, you can now lift up the board very carefully and unplug the white Molex connector. This connector does not have a clip, but it is kind of tight to get in there, so take your time making sure you don't damage any of the circuitry. Should look just like that. Once you get the connector unplugged, you're going to go ahead and pull it through inside the Phantom shell. You're going to pull it through that silver bracket. We're going to go ahead and remove this whole wiring harness and replace it with the included kit. Go ahead and pull the wiring harness through the top of the shell. Should look just like this when you get it out. Again, it's going to be 1 main connector with 2 smaller connectors on the opposite end. And this is going to get replaced by the RCD kit with the new connection. This is going to replace it with a 10-pin up top, and as well as a 3-pin JST that we're going to plug the retract module in. So we're going to go ahead and start by plugging the main pin back up in the top of the main board. Make sure that it snaps in, just like that. Once you get that connector, we're going to go ahead and run the 2 smaller connections back down to the visioning position sensor. So go ahead and run those back down through the Phantom shell, all the way down through the hole we pulled the original connector out of. Once everything's plugged in, again, you want to have the main connector up top with the 3-pin JST connector up top. This we're going to save for the retract module. On the bottom, you should have both of the smaller connectors fed through the hole that we originally fed them throughout. You also want to make sure that you run these back through the silver bracket here, which I'm going to do. This time we're going to go ahead and plug in the bigger of the two connectors into the bottom Molex housing of the board, leaving the smaller connector unplugged this time. So again, you want to make sure the bigger connector gets plugged in at the bottom of the circuit board wherever it was fed through, and then the smaller one is going to remain unplugged at this time. At this time, we can replace the small Phillips screws that we earlier removed that hold in the silver bracket. Now ready to replace the vision positioning sensor. Again, we're going to take that small connector and plug it right back into the same spot that it was disconnected from. Go ahead and plug it in first before trying to slide it over. Make sure that it clips in place firmly. Once the connector is installed, you can now place the cover back over and reinstall the 4 hex screws that we originally took out. The next step is going to be remove the stock landing gear. You're going to do so by using your T8 Torx tool and removing 2 screws from each corner of the landing gear. The next step is going to be remove the GPS compass. This is going to be housed in the bottom of the leg with the 2 Phillips screws. So we're going to start by removing the 2 small Phillips screws to remove the cover of the housing. You're going to notice that the compass is actually glued in place. So the easiest way to do this is either to take an X-Acto knife and slowly cut away at the glue, or take a small flathead and just pry it up from the bottom. You want to be very, very careful when you do this, not to tug any sort of wire. Even though it is glued in place, it's relatively easy to get out. One note to make is you want to make sure to use a driver that is not magnetized on the compass. Any kind of magnet can actually mess and damage the compass up, and it's best to keep away from doing that. Go ahead and take your flathead driver and pull the light bridge antenna out. So just take a nice thin driver, push in the edge. You can kind of just work your way out with the antenna. Once they're loose, you can actually just pull them out. You're going to go ahead and feed these through each individual leg. We're going to go ahead and remove these for the time being. You're going to want to repeat the same step on all 4 corners of the legs. You want to get all the antennas out so we can completely remove the landing gear at this time. Once all 4 of the antennas have been pulled out and your landing gear has been completely removed, you can now open up the side vents and cut a small hole here in order to allow the compass wire and the servo wire of the retract module to run through. So this is easy as done with a pair of cutters. You can cut just 1 vent out is enough. And you want to do this on each side. Just like that. Once you've done this, we can now install the retract module. very important to notate that these are directional, so they're labeled on the servo wires, as you can see here, with either an R or an L. This is going to stand for right and left. This is taken from the back of the Phantom with it facing upwards. So if you were looking at this, is going to be the right side of the retract module, and this will be the left hand side. Go ahead and install the right hand side. You're going to want to run the retract hinge. You're going to want to run the light bridge antennas through them. You're also going to want to tuck the compass wire inside for the time being. This is going to be relocated through the vent hole. This time we can screw down the hinges with the provided screws. At this time we're going to go ahead and take the provided screws and screw down the hinges. It's going to be a 2mm Allen wrench used to tighten these screws down. I'm going to repeat the same step on the other side here. So go ahead and take your hinge. I'm going to go ahead and run the antenna wire through the hinges, as well as the carbon plate. And once again, use the provided screws to adhere them to the body. This time we're now going to take the stock landing gear again, Run the antennas through the landing gear once more and install the landing gear to the retract hinges. And you're also going to want to snap in the antenna back into the landing gear. Pretty straightforward. You're just going to want to give it a nice firm press and make sure it snaps in place. We're going to use the stock hardware to reinstall the landing gear to the hinges. This time we're going to relocate the compass out of the hole we drilled earlier and remount it to the included compass mount. So go ahead and pull your compass through and feed it through a hole that was cut open earlier. once the compass is pulled through, we're now going to mount it to the included mount of the retract kit. We're going to do so with the included piece of 2-way tape, but we want to make sure that it's mounted in the correct orientation. You're going to want to put the tape on the flatter side of the compass with the wire sticking to the open part of the mount. You want it to look something like this when you're done. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a small piece of the tape that was provided. Puts this piece of tape with the mount. Use it to adhere the compass. Again, you want to make sure that you keep the correct orientation here. This is very, very important. So again, you want to put the flatter piece of the compass on the tape, and you want to keep the wires pointed towards the open side of the mount. It should look something like this when you're done. This time we're going to feed the servo wires through the holes we opened up earlier. We're going to run them through the top of the shell. I'm going to do this on both sides in order to be able to plug them into the included retract module. Okay, once you have the servo wires pulled through to the top, go ahead and grab your retract module, grab the two-sided tape, and mount the retract module to the main board. And we're going to go ahead and plug the servos into the module. One thing to make note is these servos again are labeled left and right, as well as the polarity. You want to make sure that the wires line up correctly. So go ahead and grab the left and the left. Make sure you line up the black wire with the brown wire and the yellow with the orange. This is very important that the polarity is correct or it will not work. So again, it's going to go black to brown or yellow to orange wire. The same will apply to the right side. Again, brown to black, yellow to orange. And again, confirming that it's right, plugging into right. Take the remaining 3-pin wire and plug it into the wire we installed earlier. It's connected to the main board. Once again, making sure the black is lined up with the brown wire. Make sure it's nice and tight. At this time, we're going to go ahead and confirm that everything's working before we take the time to put the shell back together. So go ahead and turn your phantom on. Turn your radio control on. And we're going to test the function of the retracts. So to activate the retracts is very, very simple. It's going to be done by your flight mode switch. Just this switch right here. It's going to be labeled P8 and F. To go up, you're going to move the switch up and down twice. So all the way down, all the way down. It will open the retracts. And to close, it's going to be one time. So down and up. So again, 2 times to open it and 1 time to close. Once you confirmed everything is working, we can now turn the phantom off and replace the shell. One thing to note is the GPS wire must be plugged in before it's snapped in. The GPS wire will plug in this little Molex connector right on the main board. So make sure you plug that in first. And then snap the shell into place, making sure that all the clips snap into place. can then replace the 3 torque screws, T8 torque screws, and the 1 T6 torque screw on each corner. Once the following is done, you may also notice that the retracts included this little carbon safety includer. This will actually keep the retracts from folding when they're not powered. Very simple, it just goes in between the legs while storing in the Phantom. Just like that. This will prevent the legs from folding anytime there's no power going to the servos. And it's very good for stack display when you put in your case, or anytime you're not flying the Phantom. It is very important that you remember to take that off, obviously, when you fly it, because it will prevent the retracts from opening. That's all for today. If you have any more questions, feel free to give us a call at RC Depot Hobbies, 714-892-4275. Thank you.